Hey guys, Daskro here again. Guns I Know episode 9, magazine edition. I'm going to talk about different types of gun magazines. Not the magazines that you flip through, but instead the ones you put into guns. That's all of these magazines. I got a lot of varieties of magazines here. I got probably over a dozen different types of magazines here from different types of guns and things like that. Some box, some detachable, some fixed. You don't see the fixed ones though. I'll be showing those a bit later. Some drum magazines, some pistol magazines, some rifle magazines, some single stack, some double stack, you name it. Also be answering your questions as well. So let's get right into this. Well, first let's talk about what a magazine is. A lot of times you hear people in movies or in TV shows or even on the internet will talk about magazines or talk about gun clips. Well, it's first important to differentiate between a magazine versus a clip. And I know people say, well, Daskro, clip and magazine, they're the same thing. People use it interchangeably. They mean one thing versus the other. But if you want to get really technical with it, a magazine is simply the place where the bullets go, where they are held in a certain magazine. Magazine can be used in more than one definition. So when we think of a magazine in a ship, it's basically the location where all the ammunition is stored. In this case, in a gun, it's in a little compartment. And within that magazine, you have a spring, a follower, a base plate, a body. But a magazine isn't necessarily always detachable. Sometimes it's fixed. And I'm actually going to give you an example. Here, this is a Mosin Nagant with a fixed magazine. The magazine is fixed in this location here, and I can pop this out, and I pop it out. It will eventually come out a little bit. I have to undo the bolt first. And once I just pop it out like this, it comes out. And so here's the spring, here's the base plate. The magazine is fixed. It means I can't take it out, but I can take out the little part in here, and so I'm going to put it back in place. And if I were to load this, I would load it with, you guys know what I say, a clip. A clip is one of these things. It's simply a piece of metal that holds the bullets into a certain position. And so this Mosin Nagant has some grooves in the end near the bolt, and that's where the clip feeds in. And this is actually one that is a stripper clip, so I would just push this all the way down, and I've loaded it. I take out the clip because I don't need it anymore, and I can throw it away. I can use it later, and now I'm ready to go. I have all these bullets in this Mosin Nagant ready to fire. I haven't pushed the bolt in, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what I just did a minute ago. Watch this. Are you ready for this? Oh, the bullets fall out. Oh, except for one. Get out of there, dude. There you go. And now it's empty, and now we're ready to go. Always wanting to think about safety. I'm going to put this back down. There you go. I got bullets all over my lap. I'm going to put these bullets down. And that's what a clip is, and that's what a magazine is. Some magazines are detachable. All of these are detachable magazines. Some clips will stay in the gun after you load it in. So the most well-known example is an M1 Garand, which has an M-block clip. You put the entire M-block clip inside that M1 Garand. It fits in that fixed magazine. You fire off those shots, so when you fire off that last shot, what do you hear? You guys know what I'm talking about. You hear that ping. That clip flies out of the gun. You hear that iconic ping. Nevertheless, though, I don't really harp on people that much about saying clip versus magazine. It's sort of like the AT-AT versus AT-AT debate in Star Wars. It's something that is I am not going to spend my time on with people trying to harp on them saying it's one versus the other, even though I know that it really is one versus the other. But it's not going to bother me if they say clip versus magazine. Let's talk about different types of magazines out there. We talked about fixed. Let's talk about all the detachable magazines out there. I have a variety of detachable magazines out here, and I may try to go through a lot of these, but maybe not all of them. Let's talk about some of the basics. At its core, I'm going to show you guys, this is a 1911 magazine. This one holds 8 or 9, I forget. It's a Wilson Combat. It's made out of steel, I think. It's loaded right now with some hollow point rounds. I think these are self-defense rounds. Nevertheless, though, This is a single stack magazine. All of the bullets, all the cartridges rather, the bullets just this part, the cartridge is the entire round, are all stacked on top of each other. Single stack. So it's only one column of cartridges. That's very limiting because if I want to double the size, I have to double the length of this magazine. What's another way of doing it, guys? Well, with magazines, you can double stack them through staggering. And so this is another magazine. This is a Bradeneye 2 magazine. And you're probably not going to be able to see this that well, but maybe I'll show a diagram in this video where while the first bullet is in a single stack column, it starts to flare on out, and then it becomes double stack. But if you take two of these bullets, these cartridges, excuse me, and you put them right next to each other, the width of these two bullets is actually larger than this magazine, ever so slightly. When you take into consideration the walls of this magazine, the magazine's actually smaller in width. Well, why is that? Well, the bullets here are staggered. They're staggered on top of each other at an angle, and so as opposed to them being right next to each other, they're sort of staggered like this. And by doing that, they're still able to put more capacity into this magazine. This one's a 15 rounder, and you could conceivably get more if you made it a bit wider, but the increase in length that you get from making them staggered isn't that big of a deal. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, double stack pistol magazines. Now clearly when you put it into a pistol, it's going to be a much wider pistol grip, and that may have some downsides in that respect. And this is 9mm. 9mm is a much smaller caliber compared to 45, and so double staggering 45 makes it really wide. I got a few other ones. I got 40 Smith & Wesson Glock magazine. This one holds, this one's actually, it says 9, but it's actually 10. I have an extension on this one. But again, staggered as well. This is what is this? This is a CZ82 magazine, also double staggered, whatever. Another one is here. This is an M1 carbine magazine. What is it, a 10 rounder, 15 rounder? It's 15 rounder. A little rust on it, that's okay. And again, double staggered as well. Double stacked, staggered around diagonally. I'm going to talk about another one here. This one is another M1 carbine. But this M1 carbine is a little bit different. Do you guys notice a difference between these two magazines, other than the fact that one's longer than the other? Well, you'll probably say, well, Dascro, the larger one, this 30-round magazine, has a bit of a curve to it. Some people may even call this a banana clip or a banana magazine. Well, the reason being of why this is the case is that if I can get one of these cartridges out of here, I have not had much luck. Here we go. I'm going to take two, actually. Oh, there's a third one. These cartridges look, pretty straight up and down, and they don't have much of anything that's sort of emblematic of it being different compared to the other cartridge. But they're actually a bit tapered towards the end here, and compared to the beginning of this cartridge at where the primer is. And what happens is that as you successively stack more and more of these cartridges on top of each other, they actually tend to bend a bit because of how the dimensions are set up within this cartridge. And you'll notice that's why a number of other magazines out here have that kind of characteristic. So let's take an example of, let's take one of the most iconic examples. An AKM AK-47 magazine. Look how bendy it is. And that's because the cartridges are, if you start putting them right next to each other, they're actually going to form a bit of a bend because that's how they're made up. You could try to force it to be straight, but you're actually going to be much more prone to jamming if you were to do that. That's why they're designed this way in that respect. Now, if I were to compare this, let's say, for instance, to to a Galil magazine, which is in 5.56 compared to 7.6 by 39, the curve isn't nearly as significant. Why is that? Well, it's because again the tapering of the cartridge, 5.56 by 45, when you stack them all on top of each other or side by side, they are going to form a much more shallow curve compared to the 7.62 by 39. There's a bunch of other examples that are sort of Do I have another good example that's really cool of that? Oh yeah, this one. I'm going to put these two down. I already talked about these. I'm actually going to talk about this one later. What is this? This was a PPS 43 magazine. I'll be actually talking about this. Someone asked me a question about one of these. Also curved for the same reason. Double stacked magazine made out of steel. It has these sort of ribs at the end. A lot of the Soviet era magazines had these sort of well-known ribs. I actually have this one's a Yugoslavian magazine, but it has the ribs as well, and as does this is just a regular. I think it's a Romanian. Yes, it's a Romanian AKM magazine. AK-47s and AKMs can all take the same magazine for the most part. Even the Yugoslavians, which have slightly different variants, and they're spot welded here. And this one's seen some wear. That's kind of cool. One kind of difference I want to mention real quick about these two magazines. They look, pretty much the same. I mean, from a manufacturing perspective, this one has more spot welds on the end compared to this one, but the stampings are nearly identical. Beyond that, how the metal is folded is a bit different. But the biggest difference between is some magazines have what are called bolt hold opens. If you're not going to be able to see this that well, but I'll post a picture if it doesn't turn out. This Yugoslavian magazine in this hand has a little bolt stop right here. So when the bolt slams into the magazine and it's all out of ammunition, it's actually going to stop in this follower. It keeps the bolt open. There are a number of other guns out there that have this kind of feature, whereas the regular AK-47 AKM magazines don't have that. It was purely a Yugoslavian feature, which really another reason why Yugo guns are kind of interesting to collect and talk about. And so it had this bolt hold open. What other guns have bolt hold opens? Well, the one that always comes to mind for me, first and foremost, is this one, is the AR-15 magazine. Again, this one has an orange follower. And so when the bolt hits this follower, it's going to stop it. And once it stops it, it actually doesn't actually stop the bolt itself. It actually engages a bolt hold open mechanism in the gun itself, whereas the Yugoslavian AK, it just stops the bolt completely. And that can actually lead to some wear into the magazines themselves. This one has some orange paint on it, and it also has one of these really cool end plates. I think this is a Magpul one, where basically you can grab it easier, you can set it on things like that. It's kind of neat. So if you got them in your pouch, you can pull it out, and you got it in your pouch. A lot of newer magazines come like that. And I'll talk about future magazines later. Let's continue on. So AR-15 magazines, some come in aluminum. This is aluminum. The ones I showed with the AKs are steel. Some come in plastic, like these Magpul P-Mags. Some come in cheap plastic, like these Tapco Galil Mags. This one's actually broken because I dropped it, and the little mag catch completely broke off. And so this one's more, I mean, I can't even use it. I mean, unless I want to, maybe use some JB weld and try to make my own poor man's follower to keep it working. It's just not that good of a magazine, and it has less capacity compared to the regular Galil Mags. I got them because they were, kind of cheap, but still not that cheaper compared to the surplus ones. I think I paid $10 for this one, $12 for this one, and the surplus ones are around $20, so a little more expensive. What other ones have followers? FNFAL, this one. Look how this is the FNFAL in 20 rounds. It's completely straight. That's because 308 is a whole lot different than the other ones, and they can actually go out quite a distance. If you've seen the 30 or 40 round FAL mags, they go out way a whole lot. And so this one has a bolt hold open as well. Again, same basic concept the AR-15 uses. It has a mechanism that engages and then holds that bolt open. Again, made out of steel. What other ones have this? I think these do. Yeah, they do. Guys, you see this? These are the SIG magazines, and some magazines actually have this kind of really cool feature. This feature where they have these little nipples and these little pockets, and you can put these in and snap them together, and now you can have, in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times 3 is 180 rounds. Yeah, I don't know how practical this would be given how heavy it would be, and how it would just be jerking around as you're moving back and forth. These ones hold 30 rounds, a lot of cartridges. These are made out of plastic. They're okay. I think these made in the U.S. I don't know. I think these are new production. What are they? No, I know that actually they're not U.S. made. They're they say Diemann Ach. I'm guessing it's German, but whatever. Let's continue. I think those are the ones that have followers or bolt hold opens to them. What other ones do I have? Some are actually made of aluminum, like I mentioned. Some are steel. These are two different HK91 and G3 magazines. One made of steel, one made of aluminum. Steel's a lot heavier, but a little more resilient. The aluminum, they're super cheap. They're like $2 a piece, or have been, or in the sub-$2 range for years. Steel's a little more expensive, but I have just boatloads of these. And this is not my total amount of magazines that I have. I have, I have lost count. I probably have a few hundred at minimum, because when I buy them, I buy a lot of them. And so, whatever. G3 magazines, who cares? Galil mags, already talked about these. This one's made out of what is it made out of? They're made out of some kind of polymer. They have a name for it, but I am forgetting what it's called. It's not Bakelite. The Bakelite ones are the ones over there. Orlite. These are Orlite magazines. But is it Orlite because it's the kind of plastic, or is it Orlite the company? I think it's Orlite the company, that's why they call it Orlite. But they're really, they're strong, and they hold 35 rounds, and that's neat. Some magazines look like regular magazines, so like this is an AR-15 magazine. This is looks like an AR-15 magazine, but it's actually an AR-15 magazine for a 22 LR round conversion. And so the 22 round magazines don't have the exact profile as the AR-15 magazines. They're a little bit different, but they are rimfire, so they are staggered quite a bit more in that respect. But I forget how many this holds, like 15, 20, 25. I don't remember. Moving on. Galil magazine 50 rounder. Look how wonky that is. This is so impractical, because if you put it in the gun, that's cool. But even when you have a bipod with a Galil ARM, you have to be in a position where you're essentially not proned out. You have to have it on like a concrete block or something like that, because when you try to bring the gun up, you won't be able to bring it in sight, because the magazine hits the ground. And you basically are pointed towards the dirt when this thing is set up. So, really big one. This one says 79 on it. Maybe it's from 1979. I don't know. Usually these do have some kind of date on them, but this one doesn't. I don't know what the deal is behind that one. And I'm getting all dirty because this one's all rusted up. Oh yeah, the AK-74 magazines. These came in a lot of things, including Bakelite. So you got the Bakelite AK-74 mag. I think these are East German. We have the Izhmash Plum. These are my favorite ones. They're just this deep purple, and they look so cool. The brown ones, Bulgarian, the Circle 21. They also came in black. They came in a bunch of colors. And the newer AK-74 magazines, which I don't own any, I'm going to talk about those in a bit, because that's another type of magazine out there. Sega magazines, Sega 12. Some, are just regular polymer. Some are polymer, and these are actually made in the U.S. by AGP Arms. That's right, in Arizona. Sometimes they're clear, and so if I got one of these. I can actually load this one more, and so you can actually see how many cartridges you have left in the gun, because it's translucent. That's kind of cool. Finally, let's talk about, I'm going to leave this for later. Let's talk about the drum mags. Drum mags operate completely different compared to box mags. Box mags are staggered up. They have one spring and pushes on up. This is a Bulgarian AKM drum magazine, 75 rounds. I'm going to open this one up. It's already loaded. I'm going to try to show this without dropping anything. Okay, so there's all the cartridges. They are in a spindle, and as the cartridges go through, it spins around in a circle, and as they spin around one by one, each of these cartridges are loaded into this little mag well, and then they go off, and that's the end of it. It spins all the way down until you run out. And likewise, if you load it halfway, you have to sort of load it in a certain order, and so you load it, basically from the outermost extreme inward, and then you have to spring load it, because the spring is under high amounts of tension, and if it's not well wound up, it actually won't work that well. It'll actually stop a lot. Let's close this one up for right now. There you go. And then I have this one's cool. I have a AR-15 Beta magazine. This one is actually not a Beta, or not a magazine made by the company that makes Beta magazines. This is a South Korean knockoff, but it works just as well. 100 rounds, same principle as the AK drum. You have to have these spindles that are all wound up, and as the The cartridges go off. They get fed one by one into this magazine body, and then they come on out. This one requires a lot of graphite to put in to sort of lubricate the system, and so that happens. It's not a big deal, but it's just sort of part of it. What are some other magazines that I didn't mention that are out there? Well, one of them is variants of the box magazine. You have the coffin magazines or the quad stack magazines. These magazines, here we go, are basically two double stack magazines put together with a common follower on top, and you can hold a lot more cartridges into it. There's a few U.S. companies like U.S. Palm that are making Simply 62x39 magazines. Surefire's making them in 5.56. They're a lot thicker, but they can hold a lot more rounds. And so I think Surefire's making 60 and 100 round models. U.S. Palm's making 45 round and 60 round models. And then the Russians, Izhmash, makes 60 round models of the 5.45, and they just look real super thick. They're not the first companies to come up with this stuff. Coffin mags have been around for a long, long time. I think the PPS 43 had coffin mags way back when, or at least the Suomi did. A lot of the straight blowback open bolt submachine guns used them. Anyway, what are other ones? Here's one that's kind of cool. This one is this is what is a sub $100 gun with a $1,000 scope. This is a J.C. Higgins 22 LR long rifle, or 22. That's the redundant 22 LR semi-automatic rifle with a tube magazine. The cartridges are just lined right in front of each other, and they're fed in a tube, and it's spring loaded, so it's a spring that pushes them forward. I bought this at a gun auction for like $80. You could have bought this in the Sears Roebuck catalog circa 1955 or something like that. That's what, I mean, it actually says, J.C. Higgins Model 30, Sears Roebuck and Company. And then I decided, because, hey, I can do whatever I want with my guns, I went ahead and drilled and tapped a goofy scope mat on here so I can put stupid optics on it and look goofy as hell when I'm at the range. It does work, though, and it's zeroed in. It does work actually pretty well. This gun is a pain in the ass to disassemble, though. The trigger assembly is a little bit more complicated than I like, but it's got it's got a little sling that's integrated into it. Whatever. Let's put this away. All right. Future of magazines. We're talking about a few of the companies that are making new magazines out there. Few of the magazines that I haven't talked about. You have Pan magazines and rotary magazines. Those are the magazines that, when you look at the American 180 or the pizza gun from Battlefield 942, I forget what the name of it's called. It's a pan. It basically looks like a big pizza pan, and it has 7.2 by 54 rounds, and they rotate around as you fire the gun. It's kind of goofy. You have helical magazines like the one in the PP-19 or the Calico pistols, or rifles rather. The Calico, that sounds about right. No, is that a rifle or is that a cat? I don't know. Doesn't matter. Future magazines. You get polymer magazines like the P-Mags. This one doesn't have windows in it. The other ones do have windows in it. Newer magazines out there are starting to have mag counters built into it, mechanical mag counters. So as you fire, it says 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, whatever. That's kind of cool as well. What else is there? That's about. I mean, polymer is really the kind of the big deal right now. Although the U.S. Marine Corps recently did a recall on all their PMags. I don't know what that's about, but that kind of caught my eye. What else is there? Okay, high-capacity gun laws. In the United States, there have been laws in the past on a federal level during the assault weapons ban for banning high-capacity magazines. So you could only buy used magazines. You couldn't buy new production magazines. And I actually, there's one of the gun shops I go to was known for taking PPSH magazines, which were these old school 7.62 by 25 Tokarev guns for these sort of burp guns that you had in World War II that the Soviets used, and they'd convert them to MP5 magazines. MP5 drum magazines were really rare in the 90s, and so they'd convert them and sell them for a real good amount of money, and they did really well from the sales. And people liked them. They worked. They had a little proprietary method to make them so it wouldn't jam, and so that was kind of cool. Anyway, though, what else is there? That's basically. I mean, there's high cap gun laws, gun laws. I don't think they're smart. If you are proficient with a gun, you can easily reload very quickly, and that. So I don't subscribe to this idea that there's that banning 100-round magazines is actually going to do much of a difference on there. And I got a whole bunch of them, so maybe a bit biased in that respect. And hopefully there's no more weapons banned, so I don't have to worry about this. Anyway, though, I think that's the end of the magazine topic for right now. Let's talk about your questions. First question from Super Vista Print says, "Hey Daskro, what do you think of the M9 M1911 issue? Which one is better, the military as a military pistol? In your opinion, of course, I really don't like the M9 because it feels weak in the way it feels in my hand. Can't really explain, but the 1911 just feels better. My favorite handgun is a Sig Sauer X6, best gun worldwide for me at least. Have a good day." Better gun in terms of military, I can't speak to that. They both have their value. The U.S. Marine Corps recently switched to the 1911 from the M9. The U.S. Army as a whole went from the M1911 to the M9. So I don't know. There are probably much greater issues from a military perspective beyond pistols and what they want out of them, be it in terms of logistics or be it in terms of commonality, whatever. I can't speak to that. But good question nonetheless, though, so I'm sorry that's not a good answer, but whatever. Next one, Honda's Best 3 asks, do you know anywhere I can get 7.6 by C7, which is 300 Winchester mag surplus? I know they use it in the M24A1. Well, you're not going to be able to find it because there wasn't much made of it. And really, actually, Splattermark says no surplus out there from what I've seen. It seems the most match-grade military sniper ammunition is produced or procured in smaller batches and usually doesn't sit around long enough to be cycled out of service as surplus. The stuff that ends up as surplus is usually general-purpose rounds like SS-109, which is 5.56 by 45, and that's ordered in the millions at a time. So good. Splattermark did a much better job describing it than I ever did, so kudos to him on that. The next question by Sano96132 asks, Dasher, can you explain more about barrel twists? I hear about this all the time, but I never understood it. Barrel twists determine how the bullet itself is going to be stabilized as it comes out of the barrel. In fact, actually, Splattermark again coming in with a great answer. Says twist rates tell you how many inches it takes for a rifling in the barrel to make a complete twist. That this twist is imparted on the bullet to stabilize it in flight. With a 1-7 twist, for example, a bullet will make a complete rotation every 7 inches of the travel. This is important for accuracy. For example, in 5.56 longer bullets like 77 grain need shorter twist rates like 1 to 8, so they stay straight on their lengthwise axis while in flight. Shorter lighter bullets need a longer twist like 1 to 9 or 1 to 12. Splattermark again, great answer. Spoiler alert, Splattermark's actually a friend of mine that I shoot with on occasion, and he's incredibly knowledgeable about guns, probably more than I am. And so it's always cool to have friends coming in and answering questions for you that they can better answer. The next question is from Cranky Smurf. As a Canadian, I'm surprised how difficult it is to get surplus ammo in the United States. A case of 7.6 by 39 corrosive, which is roughly 1,440 rounds, goes for about $280. Well, here's the thing. The thing is that Canada is not subject to that voluntary arms restraint that I talked about in previous episodes, and as such, they can get Russian ammo for a whole lot cheaper because they can buy Russian ammo and we can't. For perspective, think about all of the 7.62 by 39 surplus ammo out there and put it all into a pie. You gotta not literally put it into a pie, but think of it as a pie. About 75 to 80% of that pie is going to be Russian surplus. All the rest, the 20%, is going to be what the U.S. can buy, essentially. Well, actually, that probably isn't true. Probably another 15% is Chinese, maybe 10%, and then the other 10% is basically everything else. And the U.S. can get everything else, or at least try to buy from everything else, but Russia has by far the largest inventory of surplus ammunition, and we can't buy any of it. And so that's why it's a lot harder to get. It's easier for Canadians to get ammunition for a whole lot cheaper that's surplus than the United States from Russia. But think about it this way. 545 by 39 came in from Ukraine and Romania and Bulgaria, and it got down to sub 10 cents a round, or nearly 10 cents a round at one point. And this is just what was available at these countries. And it flooded the market, and there was so much of it that the price went down because the demand wasn't that high. If even a third of the Russian ammunition became available through a new treaty or whatever, it would flood the market and bring the prices down yet again to record levels. That'd be really cool. I'd love to see that happen. Don't know if we'll see it again, but that's okay. Next question by Almond Pop. He says, is that Polish PPS that's been imported as a pistol? If it is, how hard is it to undo the spot weld in the stock? Well, I have it right here. It comes in like this. It's spot welded. I forget where it's spot welded. I want to say that it's spot welded in an inconspicuous spot, like perhaps inside the receiver or around the receiver, so it's not easy. Take in mind, though, that when it comes in, it does not have the assembly to actually operate the stock. So the spring and push pin is not in there, and so you wouldn't be able to do this, lock it back in. You can procure these parts very inexpensively, so don't worry about that. But it's a really easy spot weld that you have to remove, super easy. It's not a big deal. And a lot of gun companies out there that are that are doing these conversions, they're charging like $50-100 for it because it's so cheap. I mean, really, most of that's going just to the parts because the labor is so easy. Next question. I am known as Big T. Is that Big T? Yeah. How long can this ammunition that you have stay fresh, for lack of a better word? How long is the shelf life? Well, I can't speak to every type of ammunition out there, but there's ammunition as old as 50, 60 years old that's routinely being sold as surplus and shot. The Polish ammunition that I had is almost 60 years old, and as long as it's kept in a cool, dry place, it can last for a long time, just like everything else. I mean, there's a story that the newer generation IGLA man pads basically can last about 2 years out in the field, but then they go dead. But if you keep them in a temperature-controlled, humidity-controlled, in the original box, in the original packaging, they can last 20 years plus. It all depends on the conditions you're putting it in. And what are the biggest conditions that matter? It's temperature, and it's humidity, and then to a lesser extent, it's vibrations and things like that. And so as long as you keep them in a good place, it's good. And I keep mine in a good place, so they'll last for a long, long time. Next question by Anonymous Squadcast. He says, question for next episode. What do you think about Top Shot? Do you think it's a fair competition? I mean, it's a dramatic reality game show of sorts that has a gun twist to it. I don't think it's a fair competition because if you ever watch any of my Battlefield videos, I'm all about competition, but competition for me at its core is not about taking people with a variety of skill sets and throwing them into a new or unknown activity that they can't become proficient in, and then seeing who's better and then declaring a winner based off that. In real life, in actual competitions, it's about people who it's not just about your raw talent. It's about how much time and effort and dedication you can to become proficient in a given activity is doing. Lance Armstrong, for instance, actually, he's probably not a good example. Let's say, I don't know. Who's another good athlete? Michael Jordan. That's an easy one. That's not as controversial. Michael Jordan is really good at basketball, but if you suddenly, made him play, badminton or some other sport he's not accustomed with, he might not do that well compared to someone who plays tennis a lot, because tennis is more similar to badminton than it is to basketball. They're both, they're all athletes, so maybe they, one should be better than the other. That's, to me, that's not a good comparison. It should be about people who focus on that given activity and their ability to best one another based on their proficiency, how good they are in the activity they do based on the practice they do and things like that. They could actually do Top Shot a bit differently, and if they actually gave unlimited opportunity to all the contestants to practice for weeks on end on a certain activity, then I actually would be all for it. But it doesn't make a reality TV show, and on top of that, it's very expensive and things like that. And so I don't have a problem with a TV show, but I don't think it's a fair competition. Next question by Quantum CEM. Hey, Daskro, how are you choosing the guns you feature on your channel? Availability, price, personal interest, popularity in game or in real life? Well, to be honest, guys, it's really about accessibility. So if I have a gun that I have access to and it's in one of the games that I play, I'm going to do a comparison on it. And so if I had access to a Gatling gun, to a General Electric chain gun in 5.56 or 7.62, I'd be doing that, and I'd be doing comparisons with the with the Havoc helicopter in Battlefield 3. That would be awesome, but I don't have access to one, so I'm not doing it. And I'm trying to get access to more things. I have a pretty decent network of guys that I'm friends with that have a lot of this stuff, and it's just a matter of scheduling and getting them out there and things like that. And so like the full auto AK or Polish Tanel is an example of that. Moving on to the next question, last question. Getting late. Kano MC says, do you prefer FAL full auto or FAL full auto or G3 full auto? Well, I'll be honest with you. I've shot the FAL full auto a few times. I've shot G3 full autos once. 308 in a battle rifle full auto is really difficult to control. And I don't think either experience I had on it is a good representation of what, for me, enough for me to form an opinion on which one do I prefer full auto. It's almost like you really have to you have to put a lot of rounds through something before you really get a feel for what you like and don't like. I had shot my CZ82 for a few times and thought it was great, and then after 1,000, 2,000 rounds, I still thought it was okay, but then I shot other pistols that didn't have nearly as harsh a recoil and had a lot better triggers, and it blew my mind. You really have to have that. You really have to be able to have at least a concrete opinion on one of them before you can start comparing. And I think that given even though their recoil systems and their gas systems, or not gas systems, their operating systems rather, are way different. They both weigh about the same. They both kick like crazy because they're both in 308. I can't speak to it. If I were to own one, I know a G3 full auto, because at least then you can have a lot more options. You can, if you have a registered auto seer or registered lower, whatever it may be, you can put it in G3 or an HK93 or an MP5 or an HK51 or HK53. That would be kind of cool. Or HK21 even. Man, that would be sweet. Again, lots of money I don't have. Maybe one day. Anyway, though, those are your questions for right now, and I think we're going to wrap this one up. Send in your questions. If you have any questions, you can just leave it in the comments below. And that's about it. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys later. Hey guys, Daskro here again. Guns I Know episode 9, magazine edition. I'm going to talk about different types of gun magazines. Not the magazines that you flip through, but instead the ones you put into guns. That's all of these magazines. I got a lot of varieties of magazines here. I got probably over a dozen different types of magazines here from different types of guns and things like that. Some box, some detachable, some fixed. You don't see the fixed ones though. I'll be showing those a bit later. Some drum magazines, some pistol magazines, some rifle magazines, some single stack, some double stack, you name it. Also be answering your questions as well. So let's get right into this. Well, first let's talk about what a magazine is. A lot of times you hear people in movies or in TV shows or even on the internet will talk about magazines or talk about gun clips. Well, it's first important to differentiate between a magazine versus a clip. And I know people say, well, Daskro, clip and magazine, they're the same thing. People use it interchangeably. They mean one thing versus the other. But if you want to get really technical with it, a magazine is simply the place where the bullets go, where they are held in a certain magazine. Magazine can be used in more than one definition. So when we think of a magazine in a ship, it's basically the location where all the ammunition is stored. In this case, in a gun, it's in a little compartment. And within that magazine, you have a spring, a follower, a base plate, a body. But a magazine isn't necessarily always detachable. Sometimes it's fixed. And I'm actually going to give you an example. Here, this is a Mosin Nagant with a fixed magazine. The magazine is fixed in this location here, and I can pop this out, and I pop it out. It will eventually come out a little bit. I have to undo the bolt first. And once I just pop it out like this, it comes out. And so here's the spring, here's the base plate. The magazine is fixed. It means I can't take it out, but I can take out the little part in here. And so I'm going to put it back in place. And if I were to load this, I would load it with, you guys know what I say, a clip. A clip is one of these things. It's simply a piece of metal that holds the bullets into a certain position. And so this Mosin Nagant has hang. Nevertheless, though, I don't really harp on people that much about saying clip versus magazine. It's sort of like the AT-AT versus AT-AT debate in Star Wars. It's something that is, I am not going to spend my time on with people trying to harp on them saying it's one versus the other, even though I know that it really is one versus the other, but it's not going to bother me if they say clip versus magazine. Let's talk about different types of magazines out there. We talked about fixed. Let's talk about all the detachable magazines out there. I have a variety of detachable magazines out here, and I may try to go through a lot of these, but maybe not all of them. Let's talk about some of the basics. At its core, I'm going to show you guys, this is a 1911 magazine. This one holds 8 or 9, I forget. It's a Wilson Combat. It has, it's made out of steel, I think. It's loaded right now with some hollow point rounds. I think these are self-defense rounds. Nevertheless, though, this is a single stack magazine. All of the bullets, all the cartridges rather, the bullets just this part, the cartridge is the entire round, are all stacked on top of each other. Single stack. So it's only one column of cartridges. That's very limiting because if I want to double the size, I have to double the length of this magazine. What's another way of doing it, guys? Well, with magazines, you can double stack them through staggering. And so this is another magazine. This is a Bradeneye 2 magazine. And you're probably not going to be able to see this that well, but maybe I'll show a diagram in this video where while the first bullet is in a single stack column, it starts to flare on out, and then it becomes double stack. But if you take two of these bullets, these cartridges, excuse me, and you put them right next to each other, the width of these two bullets is actually larger than this magazine, ever so slightly. When you take into consideration the walls of this magazine, the magazine's actually smaller in width. Well, why is that? Well, the bullets here are staggered. They're staggered on top of each other at an angle, and so as opposed to them being right next to each other, it's sort of staggered like this. And by doing that, they're still able to some grooves in the end near the bolt, and that's where the clip feeds in. And this is actually one that is a stripper clip, so I would just push this all the way down, and I'm loaded it. I take out the clip because I don't need it anymore, and I can throw it away. I can use it later, and now I'm ready to go. I have all these bullets in this Mosin Nagant ready to fire. I haven't pushed the bolt in, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what I just did a minute ago. Watch this. Are you ready for this? Oh, the bullets fall out. Oh, except for one. Get out of there, dude. There you go. And now it's empty, and now we're ready to go. Always wanting to think about safety. I'm going to put this back down. There you go. I got bullets all over my lap. I'm going to put these bullets down. And that's what a clip is, and that's what a magazine is. Some magazines are detachable. All of these are detachable magazines. Some clips will stay in the gun after you load it in. So the most well-known example is an M1 Garand, which has an en-bloc clip. You put the entire en-bloc clip inside that M1 Garand. It fits in that fixed magazine. You fire off those shots, so when you fire off that last shot, what do you hear? You guys know what I'm talking about. You hear that ping. That clip flies out of the gun. You hear that iconic